This is the Mental Metal Podcast, and I am your host, Coach Matt Toman. I'm a former athlete, teacher, coach, and athletic director that switched careers after surviving cancer and a stroke in the fall of 2020. But I'm also a dad of a son and a daughter that were successful high school athletes that went on to college. Now I use that experience along with my ICF coaching certification when helping teams, coaches, and athletes from all over the country. Each week, I will pose a specific question that will help coaches of all types better understand mental toughness. In the Mental Metal Podcast, coaches will learn to help their athletes overcome adversity without being the adversity they need to overcome. And here we go, back again. I am your host, Coach Matt Toman. This is the Mental Metal Podcast. And I am excited that you're here, willing to listen to me and, perhaps somebody else talk. But I'm just thankful that you have tuned in, and I'm thankful to everybody who keeps tuning in. Always a little bit amazed that people start to, continue to listen. I love it. I love putting this out, and I love the messages I get from people that are just people that I didn't even know were listening, and they sent me a note and say, "Hey, we love the show, love what you're doing, keep it up." Those mean a lot. I love it whenever I put the podcast out there and it develops something for my business and helps me grow. Of course, I like that, and that's the great, the best form of gratitude is, some patronage to the business. But don't worry. I like if you ever want to send me a message and just say, "Hey, we're listening and we like what you're doing, love what you're doing, keep it up." Those go that, little comments like that go a long way, and I appreciate it. And the ones that I've got, I cherish them, and thank you very much. The amount of gratitude I have for that is just phenomenal, and you guys are great for listening. And I always want to keep promoting so there's a reason why I think I'm doing well with this podcast and able to have this perspective that I have. And that's because my main, the bread and butter of my business is the mental performance coaching I do with athletes. And that's where I get most of my information and my stuff is. I don't really share stuff. Well, I don't share confidential stuff on here unless it's, I have that athlete on here and they've given me the okay. But most of my perspective is because I spend, hours every day having confidential conversations with athletes where we really talk about their mental state, how to improve it. And of course, I'm helping them improve it using the techniques that I've learned through my certification and, just the professional coaching model and that curious questioning model that we use and as coaches. And it's so informative for the athlete on learning themselves, learning how to get better, but it's very informative for me as well. And just to see how various athletes, how they tick and how their minds work. So I think that's really a huge benefit for me in running this podcast. I think that I could do a decent job of it, just having conversations with coaches and just, asking them questions. But I think it really helps me to be able to understand that perspective of the athlete and hearing them tell me things that they probably don't usually tell other people or tell their parents or tell the coaches. So it's just a good, it's great for me, talking about, having that gratitude and things like that. I get so much out of my job because I have these athletes come to me that either one of two things. One, say I know I need a little bit of help with my anxiety, the pressure I feel, and I want to get better at that. And when we do that, just to see a kid get back, get their mojo back and just keep going and play like they want to play is just so rewarding. But then of course, the other way, I get athletes come to me that don't really say, they don't quote unquote think they have a problem or anything like that, but they're just like, "Hey, I know that mentality is such a huge part of athletics. I I want to get better at it. I know I want to get better at it, or they know what's coming. Like, hey, I'm going to college, and I know I'm going to have to fight for my spot that I haven't had to do that before. So I want to be, ahead of the game. And either way, I love working with the athletes that really want to have those conversations because they have motivation on improving their mentality. So I think it just, again, gives me the great insight for this podcast. And speaking of this podcast, I want to refer back to a couple episodes that we've had in the past. I did one and actually had my daughter on, and another girl that was a woman of mine that was a client of mine. And we talked about playing for your parent. So my daughter played for me whenever I was a high school girls basketball coach, and the other girl, Anna Hayes, played for her mom, who was another guest on my podcast with Jennifer Hayes of Hartsburg Emden. And we talked a lot about growing up as a coach's kid and the pros and cons. And then I had another episode recently with Skylar Bolin, who's a professional athlete, and he grew up. His dad was his high school basketball coach. His mom was a high school volleyball coach. His grandfather was, in the Arkansas Hall of Fame for girls basketball. So he grew up around it. And we talked about how important that was and how much that helped him. And the reason I want to refer you back to those is, one, because they're good episodes, but two, because it's today's conversation is an extension and gets into that a little bit more and actually gets another level of that family generational basketball thing. And it wouldn't have to be basketball. It's just, this is what it is in this situation. When I was talking about the Anna Hayes, that's through volleyball, but I'm talking about just that generational sports and doing things like that. So my guest today is Nathaniel Meiss, and he is the head coach at El Paso-Gridley High School, which is a 2A school that's had some success in Illinois. And what's really interesting about his situation is that he grew up playing for his dad, Tim Meiss, who's a fantastic coach, was just a really, really good coach at Eureka High School for years. And now Tim, his dad, sits on his bench as an assistant, and Nathaniel's son, Micah, is a starter for his team, coming in as a junior this year. And to me, I just, knowing Nathaniel and knowing Tim and knowing the family really well, I felt like that was such a, I don't think he happens all that often, and it makes for a really good story. I kept hearing about it, within the last couple of years. I saw a news story about it. And so it's not just me. It's just a captivating story to know that you have 3 generations on the bench. And I just thought, man, what a great way to dive into mentality and how family legacy is the word I really want to talk about today. That family legacy, how does legacy affect mentality when you're coaching basketball, playing basketball, or another sport? Or if it, we don't even have to be talking about basketball or sports exactly, but just how does a legacy and what values you have and how you pass those on to further generations, how that affects how you operate in any given practice, day, game, whatever. So stick around. It's a good interview coming up with Nathaniel Meiss, and we talk about family legacy in basketball, the family business, and how to use that to drive a good mentality in sports. So stick around.
Less than 1% of high school athletes ever become professional athletes. But as parents, we invest in their athletic pursuits because we know it's worth it. Sports build vital life skills. Confidence, perseverance, and the joy they bring are invaluable lessons from sports. But what if your athlete is facing the other side? What if anxiety, apathy, and sorrow have replaced the joy? Well, I can help. My name is Matt Toman, and I am a certified mental coach. And I understand the challenges young athletes face. I've seen mental coaching transform the mindset of many young athletes. It's not about turning them into pros, but nurturing their inner strength for sports and for life. At Mental Metal Coaching, we offer virtual sessions to help them tackle challenges, build confidence, and rediscover the joy of sports. Every young athlete deserves to thrive. Mental Metal Coaching, facing adversity with a smile. The Mental Metal Podcast is brought to you by our friends at Quick Cut. Quick Cut is the new alternative to Huddle. It's no secret why Quick Cut is the fastest growing platform in the country. Their video analysis platform has everything you need. Plus, you'll get triple the storage at about half the price. And now get even more when you use the promo code 50hours for 50 hours of free video storage. Make the switch. You'll be glad you did. Visit quickcut.com today.
Welcome back to the Mental Metal Podcast, and I'm here today with my guest, Coach Nathaniel Meiss. Coach Meiss is the head coach for the El Paso-Gridley Titans out of around El Paso, Illinois, in the heart of Illinois Conference, a conference I know well. I used to coach in, and I've coached against Nathaniel before, so we've known each other for a while. And the reason that I want to interview Coach Meiss is because he just other than just being a all around good guy and a good basketball coach, is the interesting situation he has right now, in that he's got his son is going to be a junior who's doing really well, a good player, and on the bench as well is his dad, who is a former head coach for years and was Nathaniel's head coach in high school. And we'll get into that a little bit. And just the idea of 3 generations on the bench, I think, is a compelling idea for me. And just, basketball is the family business, so to speak. And it's a big deal at the Nathaniel household, I'm sure. And I want to get into just your thoughts on that and how that affects the mentality, how it affected your mentality as a player for your dad, and then now as the coach for your son. Like, it's amazing to me, as you sit on the bench, you have so many titles. You're the head coach, you're also a dad, you're also a son, and that is it's fascinating to me. So Nathaniel, just start by telling everybody a little bit a little bit about yourself and how long you've been coaching, and a little bit of the setup, if you want to.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me on, Matt. I appreciate it. It's interesting having Dad and Micah on the bench. It's been a lot of fun. We really enjoy it. Yeah, Micah's the oldest of 4 kids we have. So I have a daughter as a freshman, a daughter as a 4th grader, and a son that's a 1st grader. So we spread them out, and got a lot of activity going on in the house all the time. So
I'm sure we'll have one of them probably barge in at some point, and
it's
yeah.
possible. Yeah, boundaries. There aren't really any boundaries around here.
No.
So,
Yeah.
but I've been coaching at the high school level for 18 seasons. I was at Lexington for 4, and I've been at El Paso-Gridley for 14. And before that, I coached a little bit. I coached a year as an assistant at Auburn High School, a year as an assistant at Waubonsee Valley High School, assistant at Eureka College and Greenville College for 4 years. So I bounced around there for a while before I landed here at EPG. So it's been quite a journey from growing up around basketball to being an assistant coach, and now being the head coach, and now having my dad as my assistant. It's kind of an interesting circle.
Talk to me a little bit about that growing up. As we mentioned, you listened to the podcast about should you coach your kids. So now you've had that experience being on both sides of it now. So talk to me a little bit about that growing up and playing for your dad, and kind of your experience level in basketball.
Well, I mean, I think I went scouting with him when I was probably 3 or 4 years old. I got to go and do that with him, and so from the get-go, basketball has always been, a passion. From one-on-one games that he let me win, I think one time when I was 5 or 6 years old, until I was, I never beat him until I was 15. But, from the one-on-one games to watching basketball on television, having the Nerf hoop in the living room, and mom had to endure it. She'd, scream at me to stop bouncing around so much. And it was just basketball was all around us all the time. And we loved it. And it's the whole, I think in the book Outliers, they talk about having opportunities. Well, I was given an opportunity to be in a gym whenever I wanted to be and just soak it all up. And it was, that was a great part of growing up and playing for dad. It, I had to mature. He and I are pretty similar. And so when I was a sophomore and halfway through my junior year, we just butted heads. And I had to understand the difference between dad and coach. And it happened at the Prairie Central Hawk Classic Christmas tournament when he took me off the floor. I didn't like it. And I told him I didn't. And he said, "What did you say?" And I repeated myself. And so then I sat on the bench for the rest of the game. And that was the way it was. So I learned then at that point in time, he's my coach and I have to respect him and respect that. And we had a coming Jesus talk, and everything went a lot better after that when I saw it his way finally. So it was good. And from that point on, there's not another human being I would have rather played for.
Yeah. I mean, I remember seeing your dad towards the end of his career, and he was I think he was a little calmer at that point, but I don't think that was the situation. You're talking about what, 93, 94 when you were
Yeah, I was a sophomore in 91, 92. He burst a blood vessel in his eye, screaming at us at a timeout in my sophomore year. So, I mean, the guy, he had a lot of fire. And I remember I went back in 04 or 05, watched the practice, and he came off the floor and I said, "Who are you?" And he kind of laughed. He goes, "You just got to change with the times." And so he was great, always learning, always trying to be better. He still is. And he always adjusted to his players. And so that's what made him such a great coach.
Yeah. What was your high school career? You guys had a pretty good run your senior year. Is that right?
Yeah, we got second in state. Got beat on last second shot. In the 94 state championship.
Yeah, I was there. I watched it. Yeah. Yeah, Pinckneyville. Was it Pinckneyville?
Yeah, it was Pinckneyville.
Last second shot. Little short jumper from the baseline off a drive. Yeah, can't remember the kid's name, but yeah.
Well, Shane Hawkins,
Shane Hawkins dished it. I know that. Yeah,
Shane dished it. Shane's the head coach down at Carterville now, so we still hash things out every year at the state tournament. But then he dished it to Ryan Bruns, and Ryan buried it. So.
Yep. Yeah, I was you and I graduated the same year, so I was, we didn't clearly make the state championship game, so I went and watched. And I my memory for that night was that we were staying at a hotel that was probably 75% Pinckneyville fans, and it was a mess there that night. It was crazy. But yeah,
well, they took us post game to go, because they reserved a room, parents did, to celebrate in case we won it. Well, we didn't. So then it's like a funeral. But when we're in there, we walk in and there's Pinckneyville people celebrating at the pool as we walk into this hotel to go to this private room. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't get away from these people.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough loss, I'm sure. And then what do you? So let's talk about as you mature. You said you had to mature fast, and I get that. But what do you take away from? What are some of the things you've learned from your dad as a coach that are like this? I see that I do this the same, and you've learned from him.
I don't know if this is learned so much, but we both recognize the fact that we're probably stubborn, and we think that we know the best way, and so that's a really interesting dynamic because, and I have another, Dan Herr is a great assistant of mine, and they just fire ideas at me, and I really have to kind of take a step back from being a proud person and just and listen, and that's really interesting. But Dad said it to me one time. He goes, "I would love to have let guys call plays, but," he goes, "I think I knew what was best." And I thought that's exactly how I am. Is I just want that control. I don't want anybody else to be to blame. Maybe that's it, but I just want the control. And I think then there's a lot of responsibility. And I always know Dad he never stopped learning. And I think that's what fed that. And so I really try to soak it in as much as I can and just learn and understand that the game changes, the kids are changing, and so we have to continue to change and adjust uh, as we go year by year.
I can remember going to a coaches round table. I don't remember if you were there, but I know your dad was there, and this was in his last couple years of his career, and he is over there. Like at some point, I said something, and he was like, "What'd you say?" And I'm like, "What do you have to listen from me? Like what are you talking to me? What are you listening to me? I don't know anything." But he was always willing to soak it up, but then made the decisions after he got that information, which is that's good. No, I think that was fantastic. I love that you notice that. But how does that play when he's on the bench as your assistant?
He let me know well right away. I don't even know if the body was cold on his letter of resignation before he said to me, "Hey, I want to help you." And so he goes, "I have more to give. I want to help you." And so from that point on, and I said, "I want you to," and we talked it through. It'll be nonstop suggestions. And he told me that I'm going to tell you something until you tell me no. And it's, "Hey, have you thought about this? Hey, have you thought about this?" Or I get a direct message on Twitter about a play, or there's a set these guys are running in Europe, and so hey, this would be good for the guys. And so he is just it is mine. That's where it goes. That's what he thinks about. No hobbies. Guy reads and he thinks about basketball. And so he gives suggestions. And so there's some moments when I'm sure the assistants are uncomfortable because we kind of fire back at each other. And he's just trying to do what's best for the team, and I'm trying to do what's best for the team, and we just gotta work it out that way. And so he's been great as far as just giving me suggestions, and I have to remember this guy's been coaching for years. I got to draw on some of these experiences. And my other assistant, Dan Hurst, said, "Hey, we got to take as much as we can in the next 2 to 3 years, because after that, then he's got other grandkids to chase. So I'm not sure he'll be around for a while." So it's been great to have him, and even when we disagree, it's a lot of fun.
So between he and you may not know the exact number, but how many wins we got on the bench?
900 maybe.
Okay.
900. He's probably got twice as many as me.
Yeah, but that's some experience, right?
Yeah, I guess it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, no pressure whatsoever, Coach. Right?
No, I know. And to have him there, and they just, I mean, people kind of give us a hard time because I do have quite a few assistants. I'm blessed to have guys that want to help out. That's fantastic. And so when we threw Dad in the mix, it just, it really helped.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't become too many cooks in the kitchen and all that. But that's then you're a little bit more the orchestra leader there, and like you said, it all falls on you. So I will tell you, you're talking about playing one-on-one against your dad and doing that. I know that I can remember because my dad played some college basketball too, and I know that the first I beat him. I still remember it. I don't remember the exact age, but I can tell you where we were playing, whatever. And and he never played me again. I don't know. Is that your experience? Like you finally beat him, and he said, "We're done."
No, that's not that's the way he worked. I think I was 15, and I think we probably went right back at it. I mean, he probably just said, "Check it up again."
Yeah.
And so I can remember where we were at high school gym. I can remember I was 15 years old, and I finally got over the hump. I couldn't hardly believe it. It had been about 11 years since I'd won one, so it was good.
Yeah.
It was good. It was good.
What about the other side? Are you done playing Micah?
About the time that Micah got going, my knees were about shot, and so I had him replaced. Partially replaced 4 years ago. So I'm not quite ready to hang it up against him yet. I'm gonna probably give my healthy, these bionic knees a shot at him, but he doesn't know that yet. But there's gonna be a time.
Well, Well,
when I'm ready.
I'll make sure I'm gonna make sure and send him a copy of this podcast so he knows he's ready. He's got what
Okay.
he's got coming.
You
Yeah,
better keep working. Yeah. 'Cause I'm
yeah,
coming.
I'm sure. No, it's just a great, and I'm I don't want to. Jealous isn't the right word, but I'm very envious of the situation you have. It has to be just every time you sit on the bench, there has to be a level of pride there that it's like, man, I got my dad down there and I got Mike on the floor. And what was that like that first game when you had that going on?
It's really interesting. I don't think I enjoy it when I'm in the moment as much as I probably should.
Mm.
I look at it later. I take a step back. Mom took a picture of Dad, Mike, and I after that first game at Thanksgiving when he was a freshman, and so I don't. I look back at it now as we're going, and I start thinking about how I really need to embrace these times a lot more um, than I did. You know how it is. You get caught up in the moment of coaching and the season of coaching, and you're patterned to what you're doing, and you're one thing after the other. And so sometimes, stepping back and smelling the roses doesn't happen until March. And so I've just really tried to, enjoy what I have been blessed with, and I just in the moment sometimes it's hard.
It is. Yeah, because you're focused, and you want to focus on winning a game, and there's some level of again. Maybe we'll talk about that when we get after the break. But it's how do you switch between that role? You go to coach mode to dad mode,
Mhm.
coach mode, son mode. How do you do that? So let's take a quick break, and we'll come back and we'll chat about that.
All right.
Educators and coaches, let's talk about professional development speakers for a moment. You know the drill. There's some good out there, but there's a lot of bad. I've been there and I've felt your frustration. And that's why I've got something different for you. Professional development that's actually engaging and genuinely useful. As a certified coach and a former educator, I understand the struggles our students and athletes face. The pandemic's impact is real, but so is the potential for positive change. Mental Metal Coaching has 2 presentations designed to help you tackle the social emotional challenges that schools are dealing with. First is for teachers of all ages and is called Live Your 100. This transformative journey draws from my own experiences overcoming hardship. This seminar equips you with the tools to assess mental states, conquer challenges, and infuse positivity into classrooms and to teams. Learn not to survive, but actually thrive. And the second presentation is specifically for coaches, those that tend to sit in the back and draw up plays during presentations. This presentation is called Forging Mental Metal in Athletes. It is not your typical PD. It's about actionable techniques. Empower your athletes to face adversity, develop growth mindsets, and break mental barriers that hold them back. I get it. The skepticism around PD is real, and that's why Mental Metal Coaching stands out. My presentations are rooted in real-world struggles, delivering strategies that you can apply right away. If it all sounds good, contact me, Coach Tillman, or send my information to your administration. Let them know that you want to see professional development that will actually make a difference. Welcome back to the Mental Metal Podcast. Coach Matt Toman here again with my host, El Paso-Gridley Titan head coach Nathaniel Meiss, and I want to get into the different roles you have to play on the bench. And you mentioned about struggling to soak it in at the moment, and how do you? Yeah, do you have a switch that goes dad mode, coach mode? How do you do that, or do you not do it well?
Well, I had to say it out loud. So when we met with every kid, Micah's freshman year, and we told him he was going to be on the varsity. Um, we talked about things he could do, and continue to get better at. And then I said, here's what I'm going to do for you. Here's what I'm going to do. It's not for him, it's for me. Well, and indirectly for him. I said, when we leave this gymnasium, I will not talk about it, the game, the practice, unless you bring it up. I said, I will become dad right when we walk out of that gym. And so I've had some times when, he's the last guy shooting in the gym and I have to walk up to him and make sure I tell him what is on my mind before we leave that gym. But it provides a parameter for me. And I need that. I would say, whatever, whenever. I don't, he's not the same personality as me. So dad and I could talk about it and fight about it. Micah will, he's a little more introverted, so he'll withdraw a little bit and not say anything to me. So we could go, for who knows how long without speaking, if I would be abrasive. And that's what I would have a tendency to do if I had free reign. So I said, once we leave the gym, I'm dad. And if you want to talk about it, bring it up. Otherwise, I'll talk to you about it when we're back in the gym. So
two questions on that.
Okay.
One, how well have you adhered to that?
I would say 99% of the time
That's
when we
pretty
walk
good.
in this door, I can't hardly remember. I'm sure there's a time I've maybe said something, but for the most part, I've really tried. I needed to say it out loud and make it a promise to him so that I would have to, so I would adhere to it.
Yeah. And then question number 2, how often does he bring it up?
Once in a while. We're getting more into, it's really interesting. I can see this transformation as he's just getting older, where he feels a little freer to talk about stuff in general, right? So, but basketball for sure, bring up some things, and just so that's been good. As he's matured, he's kind of felt a little more free to talk to me and ask questions. So
yeah, and that's because you listened to that podcast where I talked about this, and I was terrible at that. I just I tried, but it's really difficult when you put so much of your heart and soul into something, then it's hard to turn it off. But I commend you for doing it. So
well, dad never really hammered me at home about different things. If I was disrespectful or did something like that, he might, or the time that he had to come down to the basement and talk to me after he benched me at Christmas time, and he had to explain things and how he wanted me to lead and what he expected out of me. Other than that, I can't remember a lot of times other than just talking about games that we watched on television. And so he never said it to me, but he didn't beat me down with it when I got home at all, I don't think. So, he's apologized for the way he coached. And I said, Dad, I deserved every bit of what you gave me. And I wouldn't want it any other way. I never thought you were harsh. And but it was on his mind that he was, but I never thought that about him. So.
Yeah, but you remember that conversation after he benched you, yeah?
Oh, we didn't talk at all when we got home. And my mom was like, just talk to each other, just talk. And I said, I don't have anything to say to him. He said, I don't have anything to say to him. And we're sitting in the same room. And then eventually, it was probably 24 hours or so later, he finally, came down and said, and just talked to me. And then it was good. I needed to hear it. And that was the time to tell me about it.
No, 24 hours is probably a good idea. It probably went much better after 24 hours than if you'd have just jumped right into it at the beginning.
Yep.
So a lot of what I do is working with athletes and help them to handle the pressure, the anxiety that comes with it. Anything that we love, right? Which in your case, my case, is basketball, right? Mm-hmm. And anytime that we have something that we love and put so much into, we have a natural about, anxiety and just expectations that go with it. How did you feel growing up having those expectations? And then we'll also ask how you think that affects Micah, because you're right in the middle of it.
Right. Yeah. I personally never felt pressure. I was always a little guy on the playground, so I just felt like I had to fight tooth and nail. And so I always had a chip on my shoulder. And so I actually thought I was sitting there as a freshman watching one of Dad's really good teams play for the regional championship, and I thought I should be out there playing. But I was 5'6". I had no chance of being out there playing. But in my mind, I was 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and I needed to be out there. So I felt like I should be playing, and I never once felt any sort of pressure. And I know things were going on behind the scenes, and dad and mom were dealing with people chirping. Um, so that was part of. I didn't let it affect me at all, and so I, I, that's always been my mentality. I think that's what helps me coach. Then I can, I just kind of like water off a duck's back, and I don't mind too much people bad mouthing me. But so as a player, I didn't feel like there was any heat besides what I was putting on myself as a competitor.
Which is which is still there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you didn't feel like it was extra because you were playing for your dad or the expectations from him. How about if we focus the lens on Micah, because you say he's a different personality than you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think he thought he kind of breathed a sigh of relief when we told him he was going to be on the varsity as a freshman. So I think I kept him a little bit on his toes through all of that. I think part of him, even this year, I thought he was our leading scorer, but I still thought he fought me a little bit about some things, and so I just think I think he did feel it a little bit, because now he went from a key player on a really good team, and then now he's supposed to be our best scorer on a team that we were just above 500, so we were okay. We were really young, and I think that was a lot of pressure for him. I think he felt it, and I think that he had some growing pains because of it. But I think he's going to be better off.
And it has to be there, but what sort of that expectation is going to be there. And when you talked about, people chirping, and that doesn't stop. Like that's probably still happens in your situation now. It's happened back then. It happens now. And I think that can affect kids. They hear probably more than we do, or like just because it rolls off your back doesn't mean it rolls off his. How do you deal with that, or just let it go?
The chirping or the
yeah.
What is it, the old adage, that they're saying it behind your back, it must not be worth hearing at all, or it's just it's one of those things. If somebody doesn't say it to my face, I don't really worry about it or pay too much mention. Now it's hard on my family, I think sometimes. I know probably my daughter's heard it. I'm sure, my wife sits away from the fans for, because she would get fired up and probably let somebody have it. And so this community where I got, a guy here in town who's a lifelong friend from Eureka, and he lives in town. I got my cousin who's a long time, so I got a support system where I don't need to be out there trying to necessarily, get along with everybody.
I mean, my wife and I have a story. I know the year I was coaching my daughter, and there was one time my wife came home and she was fired up about something. And I said, look, you have to either move and sit in a different spot, or don't bring it to me. Cause I can't, it's too much. I can't deal with all of that. And I don't want to deal with all that. Like, I'm doing my best. I'm doing everything I can. And where my heart is, and so, but it's hard. It's hard. It can be. And it can really affect the kids as well. So how do you talk to me about we talked about the expectations and the pressure that the kid can feel. What level of expectations and extra pressure do you kind of add for Micah? Like, how do you challenge him? How do you be the dad and the coach and challenge him? And because that's a mix, right? You might figure it out, but he might struggle to know, when is it my dad talking? When is it my coach telling me I need to get better? And
well, I never when he was growing up, I rebounded for him, but I really didn't say much. If he wanted some help with his shot, I'd always say, well, you need to ask your grandpa. When he played travel ball in junior high, I just kind of said, "Hey, I really enjoyed watching you play." I never really, unless he asked, I never really tried to, I don't know, lay anything on him that's extra or try to, you know, critique his play, because I knew when he was a freshman, he was going to hear a lot from me, and so, and he has. I would say, um, I'm hardest on him. Number one, he's my son. At number two, I mean, he's a very good player, and so I can see his potential, and so since he made the varsity team, I would get after him, and he's probably my whipping boy. And I can. We had a real good group of seniors when he was a freshman, and I would ream him about something, and he'd go off the floor. And I remember one of the seniors, putting his arm around him and just pulling him in and talking to him. We just had some good leaders that year that helped him, and that's why this year was a little bit different, because then Mike is supposed to be the leader, even though he was the seniors. He was good friends with them, and they were good guys. I got after him. When I'd get after him, they didn't necessarily have that same kind of guy, putting his arm around him.
Yeah.
I'd have to tell my dad, I'd say, "Grandpa, please go over there and talk to him." Okay. Because if I go over there, he's not going to like it. And that's been a good buffer. Dad's been good from that standpoint. He gets his practice plan. He gets ready to coach. He doesn't have to all that stress where he gets all fired up anymore. So he's patting guys on the back, and especially Micah. It's good to have Grandpa there.
I mean, what a great weapon for you to have, or a button to push, or a lever to pull, to be like, I'm not the voice he needs right now. He needs Grandpa, knowing that you got somebody there that's a family member that's very knowledgeable and knows what he's doing. That's a nice bullet to have in your gun there, Coach, to be able to do that. It really is. So yeah, let's take another break. We'll come back for one more segment. That sound good to you?
Sounds good. Yep.
Beautiful.
The Mental Metal Podcast is brought to you by our friends at Quick Cut. Quick Cut is the new alternative to Huddle. It's no secret why Quick Cut is the fastest growing platform in the country. Their video analysis platform has everything you need. Plus, you'll get triple the storage at about half the price. And now get even more when you use the promo code 50hours for 50 hours of free video storage. Make the switch. You'll be glad you did. Visit quickcut.com today. Coaches, empower your athletes to overcome adversity with the Mental Metal Academy. Teach them to face and conquer hardship without adding extra pressure. Visit the link in the show notes and enter the code METTLE, that's METTLE, at checkout for a special listener discount.
Hey, we are back with one more segment with Coach Nathaniel Meiss of EPG. And we're really leaning into a lot about the fact you got 3 generations on the bench, and how cool that is, and how that's so useful and prideful and fun for you. And I can't help but think about the word legacy, and that legacy coming from your dad to you to Micah. And let's say we're doing the Meiss family crest here, if you want to, for the legacy on basketball, and the way you want to coach, the way you want to play, and just the mentality you like to have. What goes on what's the family motto? What's the family crest that you took from your dad that you want to pass on to Mike? I know I'm putting you here on the spot to be very creative here, but yeah. I think you've probably got some ideas.
I'm not real creative, but if we had some words to put on that crest, compete. I think that was a big one. I think Dad always demanded that his players compete, and through that they play as hard as they possibly can. I think the one thing that I struggle with as a player at first, and then I really do think Micah had a hard time this year, was just the respect for the game, respect for the opponent, respect for the officials. I think that took me time to understand as well, and just that's a maturity thing, I think. And so I think to respect those things, um, it just helps you as you carry yourself as a competitor. I think it's if you respect the game. Um, and boy, I don't know that third one. Maybe it's just a love of it. We just love basketball. It's incredible. I'm blessed to be able to do it and to be able to coach and to be able to have my dad uh, now on the bench, which is completely different because we used to never. There's some things you just don't share with the guy you knew you were going to play against. And so coaching against him, I kept things in my hip pocket all the time, and I know he did too. I'd say something to him, and he'd go, "Well, you never asked me about that." He wouldn't give up some things, and um, thank goodness we battled to a 500 record against each other, or else one of us had bragging rights.
You took the question out of my mouth. What was you guys' record against each other, coaching against each other?
I think it ended up 9-9. He got us in the COVID game, I think.
That doesn't count then. That doesn't count.
I know it shouldn't, so I should be 9. We just toss it out. He's counting it though. I'll tell you that.
I guarantee he is.
Yeah, so I think we were 9-9.
No, I'm not going to count that. I know that my son beat you guys in the COVID year, so we can't. We're going to keep that. We're good.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. No. Who won the first meeting? What was that like?
He did. He won the first. I think he won the first 3. I was at Lexington. We were playing at Christmas time in the Hawk Classic. Christmas, and so did he have? Yeah, he had Jordan Prosser. I think I don't remember how Jordan was who played at Bradley. And we had Alex Tanney. I had Alex Tanney. And so they were better than us, and they got us at Christmas time.
Yeah, I mean, you were coming into you're a first year coach, like you got the kind of a job that a first year head coach is going to get, and he was Eureka that had. Yeah, it'd been a while. So that was that like 08, 09, somewhere in there? Probably.
Christmas of 05 or 06. One of those
05,
Christmases.
okay.
I can't remember. Actually, I think Alex might have been a junior, so I think it might have been my first year at Lexington. Yeah, in 05, Christmas of.
Yeah.
And Mom wore green, and then she had some purple on. But I'll tell you, that faded after a while. That faded. She went straight green. Oh yeah, she didn't get her purple back on until 2021, 22. She put the purple back on.
Now she's all in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So talk to me a little bit about. We talked a little bit about the benefit of being a coach's kid, and talk to me. You were a coach's kid, and now you're a coach with a kid. Talk to me. It makes it. I know it's obvious, but what's so beneficial on? I know the kid gets more shots up. That's obvious, right? Mm-hmm. But what is it about the mentality that a coach's kid is able to develop?
Well, I think just, Micah started going scouting with me when he was about 4 years old. And so then, I'm pointing things out. We're talking about things. He's asking questions. Even at that young, he's especially inquisitive at that age, but he would just sit and watch and soak it all in, even at that age, which I think Dad had a little harder time with me. I was a little more active than Micah probably was. And so, but Micah was always, you could tell, just thinking about it. And so we could have those conversations. And we didn't have to have a game on television. We're going out and scouting, we're hanging out. And so that, I think, just a basketball IQ then starts to develop. And I think that, and you can see it now, I can start to see it even more out of him where he really understands the game, and he's starting to make the right plays more often. And I think that just comes with being around it. And really, he really has always loved it. And so that's sparked a lot of good conversation.
I mean, on some level, you could say, well, he had no choice but to love it. But I don't know that that's the case. I think that, you have to.
Yeah, well, it's like my daughter. played in junior high. And then as a freshman, she decided not to play. And it was a little bit of a shock to us. It freed my winter up. So I was not, I was not completely against it because I didn't have anything going on Mondays and Thursdays then, but it surprised me. And then she went and did an open gym this year. Uh, and the coach came out and said, and then she didn't go back. And then the coach said, well, what's she doing? And I said, she just doesn't, I don't know. I don't know if she just doesn't want to do it. I can't explain it. I can't make her do something that she doesn't want to do. So that's been an interesting dynamic, is because now she doesn't do it. She just does volleyball, and but she loves watching it. So she'll come with me to games in the winter time as well. So, but she just doesn't want to play it.
And that's completely fine. It's
Mhm.
hard sometimes. I'm sure there's a little bit, like you said, or like I said, it's the family business. How can you not play basketball, right? And that's
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. What's it? So take me to Thanksgiving dinner, right? We're getting like, what's the conversation and the vibe as we prepare? It's coming up. Like,
Yeah.
what's it going to be like?
Well, my brother-in-law is the head coach at
Yep.
Eureka, and so
Oh yeah. So now he's the odd man out, right?
yes,
Oh, does he get? Do you guys
now he
put
is.
his?
Yeah,
Do you put his name tag at the kiddie table?
that's right.
Please,
Yes, that's
please do that.
exactly right.
Please do that for him. Please do
Yeah,
that
sit
for
on
me.
the island. Yeah,
Put him over there. That would be fantastic.
yeah. So and now we don't. Well, we used to play at Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
and so it was a whole lot different when Dad was sitting on the other bench for sure. I had a real good point guard in 12, Brian Ayresman,
Mm-hmm.
and when he graduated, we still had a real good center, Bodie Schliff, and I thought we were still going to be really. I thought we're going to be really solid still. Um, and we're sitting at Thanksgiving. Dad let it get all the way to Thanksgiving, and he looks at me and he goes, "You don't understand how much you're going to miss Brian Ayresman." And I said, we'll be okay. Oh boy, he was right. And he waited though till right before we were going to play him to be able to say that to me. So uh, he was right. We did miss him, but now, yeah, we're a little more free talking. And so
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, you get a little bit, yeah. And now
I
with
love.
Micah around, everybody gets excited. And I have nephews that an eighth grader and a sixth grader, and they love it. And so it's a lot of good banter a lot of times.
I agree. I think it's I'd love. Yeah, I'd love to be a fly on the wall just to hear some of that conversation. It's got to be entertaining and fun to listen to. Just all the, what gets said, what doesn't get said. But it's I know that to me, like, Thanksgiving is always like, hey, basketball's right around the corner, and that's always it's got to be a fun time for the family. So last question here, I always ask every guest I have, what should I have asked you that I didn't?
Oh
What's
man. Um, I don't know. We hit on a lot of things. We covered a lot of stuff. The one thing was when Micah when he was going to be a freshman. I never really let on that he was going to be on the varsity. I said that. I said he got real excited when he told me he was going to be on, and he made it. Um, but and we had a great group of seniors, and they were a mature group of seniors, and um, it was interesting how he proved himself through. He was an eighth grader at COVID. He started getting invited to go to play at these East Peoria, or they'd go to these gyms and sneak in and play. And he kind of started getting invited to those things, and um, I didn't start him all that summer at anything, and so I got a little bit. We were running a shootout, and I got there a little bit late, and I just named the starters, and Micah wasn't one of them. And we sat down on the bench, and Dad goes, um, Luke Eilenfeld, who's one of the seniors, he goes, Luke named the starters, and Micah was one of them. So he goes, I just want you to know that. And so it was really interesting. A lot of times when you're a freshman and you're the coach's kid, and you really have to earn a lot of respect. Well, he did, and he did it by just playing with these guys all the time, showing them he could shoot the basketball, and they respected him. And and they were great teammates, and we had a great year. But it was really awesome how he broke his way in all on his own, but they were mature enough to understand, hey, this kid can help us win, and they embraced him.
The misconception sometimes about like, well, yeah, he's the coach's kid. Of course he's going to get to play. But I think that kids know the difference on who gets, and I think that a coach's kid sometimes has to prove a little bit more to get that respect. And I don't always think it's unless you've got a coach that's doesn't care and is like, I don't care if my kid's good or not, I'm just going to play him. But I rarely see that. That's not. It's almost always the other way around, and the kid has to earn it. And I don't know if you got any flack for that, but I watched him his freshman year, and he definitely needed to be starting and playing. So you made the right call. You're
Thanks.
fine.
Well, we played East Peoria third game of the year, our Thanksgiving tournament, and my two starters foul out, big kid and a guard, and Mike is nailing free throws down the stretch. So that was like a thing where then all of a sudden, the fans see it. It was a good atmosphere. And then they say, oh, well, maybe he can play a little bit. And so he definitely earned every bit of it. And I was I was relieved, because that's, as a dad and the coach, that was something that was still in the back of my mind. Is he good enough? And he proved to everyone that he was.
Which is great. And that's what I'm sure there's got to be a moment or two on the bench that the toggle switch went from coach to dad as he's making some free throws down the stretch, right?
That part, it does happen. You feel a little bit of pride that your kid's knocking down some game-winning shots or free throws. You definitely can see that. Yeah, but just can't dwell on it for too long, because it's next play.
And that's fair, but I will tell you that so don't dismiss that, soak that stuff up, because you're halfway through his high school career, right? And see, there it is, right? You feel that already. It'll be gone before you know it. So yeah, coach, if you need any help designing your crest, maybe compete, respect, and love, and you want to make a tattoo, let me know. I'll see if I can help you out. But
I'm not creative.
And see if Tim wants one too. Just the whole family. But that's probably not going to happen. But hey,
he could use a tattoo. Yeah, he could use one.
Sure. Coach, it's been great having you on the podcast. I've really enjoyed it, and thanks for being on. Any last comments?
Hey, I appreciate you having me, Matt. This has been a blast. So thank you very much for thinking of me and my family.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, I'll pay attention this year. Good luck for the season and all you guys.
Appreciate that. You as well. I know you're still chasing Lane, so
we'll do my best to get up there and watch, and we'll see how it goes. So yeah.
Less than 1% of high school athletes ever become professional athletes. But as parents, we invest in their athletic pursuits because we know it's worth it. Sports build vital life skills. Confidence, perseverance, and the joy they bring are invaluable lessons from sports. But what if your athlete is facing the other side? What if anxiety, apathy, and sorrow have replaced the joy? Well, I can help. My name is Matt Toman, and I am a certified mental coach. And I understand the challenges young athletes face. I've seen mental coaching transform the mindset of many young athletes. It's not about turning them into pros, but nurturing their inner strength for sports and for life. At Mental Metal Coaching, we offer virtual sessions to help them tackle challenges, build confidence, and rediscover the joy of sports. Every young athlete deserves to thrive. Mental Metal Coaching, facing adversity with a smile.
Welcome back to the Mental Metal Podcast, back with a little bit of a breakdown on that interview and some points that I really want to dive into. We went a few different ways in that interview with Coach Meiss, and I always go back and listen to the interviews and then give you my breakdown about it. And there's so many things that's in that interview. It's like, oh, I should have asked this or I should have asked this, but there's a lot of stuff in there. And with a guest, I want to let them talk. I want to let them say these things, and then I'll have a chance, just like I am now, to say a few things about why I think that's important, even if we didn't talk about that during the interview. And I think that one of the things I really want to talk about is, and I said it at the beginning, is that word legacy and how important legacy is or can be for not just coaches, but just for individuals, and what we want to be about and what we want to leave for others. And I think one of the first things he said there, when he mentioned a book, Outliers, and we didn't talk about it much, but if you haven't read that book, it's Outliers. It's by Malcolm Gladwell. You should read it. All of his books are really pretty good, but Outliers is good. It gives into the sports quite a bit. And in that book, he talks about patterns of advantage and how practice and the whole 10,000 hours and those things and how they really matter more than the genetics part. It's more about what you become is what you practice. And I think that when you're talking about coaches' kids and, kids growing up playing basketball or another sport and always being around a parent that is in that sport, they do get this pattern of advantage and they get just more practice being around it. And like most times, whenever you have a kid that is a coach's kid in basketball, the kid's a pretty good shooter. And nobody even questions that or why that is. It's pretty obvious. They spend more time in the gym. There's a ball, there's a hoop, dad's busy doing something and there's nowhere else to go. You just go to the gym and get some shots up. So they get more hours in and they're good shooters because of it. He didn't say a ton about his son, but Nathaniel's a great shooter. Or I'm sorry, Nathaniel was too, because his dad was a coach, but so is Mike is a great shooter. And that's because they just spend so much time in there. But I think it goes beyond some of these physical abilities you can develop. It's like you talk about both Nathaniel and Micah grew up playing, scouting with their dad. They go on scouting trips to learn plays and stuff from other teams and all these things and these opponents. And that basketball IQ is more, we're talking about, you're not really born with a genetic ability to understand a sport. It's something that's developed. And that's, when you grow up going scouting, you start to understand the game a lot better. And that's a thing that really helps out kids and coaches' kids. And another thing that he mentioned, he talked about the chirping and hearing, detractors and parents and other players and things like that might be saying things about the family and the way he's doing things, because that happens. Not a fan of it, but it's part of it. And it's not just basketball. We always, if people that are in charge of something, it's natural for people to want to question it. And a lot of people do it out loud, especially when their kids involved. But Nathaniel, it's clear to me that he grew up with a dad that was a coach, and then he's adopted the idea of, well, I just water off the duck's back. He kept saying it doesn't, like, those things don't bother me. And he started talking about, even though his son is a little bit different, has a little bit of a mentality that it bothers him a little bit more, but even then you could tell it didn't bother him much. So I think that there's something to be said for being a coach's kid and getting that experience in not letting others detract you from what you're trying to do. Now, to be fair, that's not saying you shouldn't listen to criticism, but we have to be you have to be worried about how much you worry about what others are thinking. And I think that whenever you have a dad that's a coach and he's able to sort that out and ignore that, then you can as well. So I think a lot there in a coach's kid is the things they develop just from being around the kid. And I think that's part of the legacy, but that just is natural. But then we really get into the legacy, and I asked him about a family crest, and I really didn't intend on asking that question, but again, it felt right to ask because we're talking about the family business and something be very important for the family. That's like, I don't know the Meisses without basketball. Dad was a great coach. Like he said, I don't know how many wins dad has, but it's close to, Tim is like 600 maybe, and Nathaniel's maybe 300, somewhere in there. I don't know. But regardless, this is what they do. And so I asked him about the crest, and he thought about it a little bit, but his answers were really good. And he talked about how the family, they love to compete. And they've developed respect for the game. He said for the game, the opponents, the officials, all those things. And they just have a love for the game. And I think that is so useful that he could identify what they are inside of basketball. And it's not just like, oh, we just go try to win, right? They compete, but they just really have this respect and love for the game. And I think that really helps to understand where your mission is, where your vision is, what you're trying to get to. And I think that that's really important for everyone. And I don't think you have to be in their situation to start be thinking about your legacy and what's important to you. Doesn't matter if you're a coach, doesn't matter if you're a parent, doesn't matter if you're just a player. What is your legacy that you want to leave for others in whatever sport you do or whatever you're about? I mean, maybe you don't do a sport or you're not interested in sports at all, but I don't know why you would be listening to this podcast. But what legacy do you want to leave? What intentional stuff do you want to leave about yourself that's in your legacy? And once I asked him that question and I was kind of looking over my notes from this podcast, I realized that it was a great question for myself. Like, what legacy am I trying to lead in with my kids and this podcast and my business? And it got me to sit down and think about it. And luckily I was able to get right fairly easily. I was able to get some answers. If I were to get three, the first one would be, well, the three I would get were persistence, intensity, and knowledge. Persistence is just so important for me, and just some of the stuff I've gone through. But I always felt that way before. I'm just somebody who just keeps at stuff. One of my favorite quotes ever growing up and even now is with President Calvin Coolidge said, "Nothing in this world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men without talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb, and education will not. The world is full of educated derelict. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent." And it's just one of my favorite quotes because it means, like, it doesn't matter what hand you're dealt in a game of poker with or life, whatever, just keep persistent, like keep going, just keep going, and it'll work out if you just persistent. And then the intensity, if you know me at all, when I was playing or coaching, I'm an intense individual. When I'm doing something, I'm doing it. And I was able to figure that out. That word was so important because one of my favorite, I had my favorite quote from Calvin Coolidge, but my favorite Bible verse, which I mentioned, if you go back and listen to that podcast with Kramer Soderbergh on, religion and hoops and all that, which is really good. I mentioned this verse. It's Colossians 3:23. It says, "Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as though working for the Lord and not for human masters." So I love that one. Like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it, like I mean it. Do it like you mean it. Play like you mean it. Coach like you mean it, right? Work like you mean it. Do it as though you're working for the Lord, which is really important to me. And then the third one is, of course, knowledge. And knowledge has always been a big thing for me. I used to be a teacher. I was a science teacher, and I love learning knowledge, sharing knowledge. I'm annoying with it sometimes. I'm somebody who sees a bird or an insect or the phenomenon in nature, and I got to stop the car and tell everybody about it. And that's just what I like to do. And that's why I get so passionate about this podcast and these things that I've learned about neuroplasticity and helping people change their mindset. It's like I learn these things and I'm like, oh, everybody needs to know this. So I just get passionate about that. So that's my three. And that took me just a few minutes to kind of put that down and be like, oh, here's what I'm about. And I don't think you don't have to be in Nathaniel Meiss's situation. to do that. You can just say, hey, what are my three? What's my legacy? If you're not a coach, then, but you have kids, I don't care. Think like a coach, right? What are your non-negotiables? What's really important to you? Live by them and share it with your kids and say, this is what I want us to be about. This is what I'm about. This is what I'm trying to instill in you. Like, don't make it a secret. Let them know what your values are. And if you're a coach with no kids, don't worry. That's fine. Like, you're probably doing it because you like working with kids and you like sharing information and you like a sport. Well, what are your values? What's important to you? Don't make it a secret. Let them know, right? Let those kids, those athletes, let them know what you're about, what you're trying to do. Have something that is your legacy. So it's not just what you say, but if they say, hey, what is, Coach so-and-so, what do you think he's about? And they say, oh, well, he's always saying this, or she's always saying this, right? Let them know where your focus is, where your moral compass is. And if you're a player, it's never too early to start figuring it out yourself and knowing what drives you and what's important to you. These are values. And if you really are like, I don't really know what my values are and what they mean to me, honestly, it's one of the best things you can do in coaching. If you are ever interested in have somebody be like an executive coach or life coach or mental performance coach, whatever, or if you're an educator, just any person in the world, if you were able to work with a coach, one of the best things you can get from it is a little better understanding of what your values are and what they mean to you and how you can use them. So that's just a little side note on a commercial there. If you're ever interested in coaching and you're like, I don't know what I'd get out of it, that would be like, it's way up there on the list. It's like you would understand your values and why they're important to you and how you can use them. And that's just, it's a great feeling to have, to wake up every day and know, here's what I'm about and here's what I'm going to try to go do it. And that really ties in again to that legacy thing. Like now the Meiss family being coaches in, basketball in Illinois, it's high profile. It is, even if it's small schools, people know who the coaches are. They know the situations it makes on the news, and in middle America and the Midwest and areas, we love basketball, man. And we just, it makes the news. And so they've got this platform to kind of show their family legacy and what they're about. But that doesn't mean you can't do it. Oh, what are you about? Know what you're about and share it with those you care about, and share it with, know your values, know the values and honor them, honor your family, honor your team, honor yourself through those, and really strive to do better around those values. And that's a great way to constantly be increasing your mindset. If you are working towards some things that are in line with your values, oh man, it's a great feeling. It's a great feeling to be doing those things and doing it right. Now now you can also honestly really, through coaching and through other ways, you can start to notice, oh, here's where I'm upset about stuff. And you can start to realize, oh, I'm not honoring something that I really care about, a value of mine. So your values and the legacy you want to leave for others, whether it's because you're a coach with your dad on the bench and your kid playing or not, doesn't matter. There's lessons from this story that you can apply to your own life. So I hope that you do that. I hope that you can find those values and start to really honor them. So that's my hope for you. And yeah, we are out of time. So this is the Mental Metal Podcast. I'm thrilled you made it to the end and listened to me. And I've been your host, Coach Matt Tillman. And remember to keep forging your metal. Thanks again for listening to the Mental Metal Podcast, produced by Coraggio Media, sponsored by QuickCut, a video management platform for every level of play, and by Mental Metal Coaching, helping athletes learn to face adversity in a spirited and resilient way. The Mental Metal Podcast is created each week to help players develop more mental toughness, and that is something that will help all of us. So help me out and like and share the Mental Metal Podcast with your friends. Until next time, keep forging your metal.